What's going on, guys? This is Mitchell back with Slammed Outdoors, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about how to put line on a spinning reel, and more specifically how to put braid on a spinning reel. So I'm going to kind of walk through that whole process from start to finish, about how to put on like backing and then how to put the braid on itself. So let's roll right into it. Okay, so for starters, I'm going to be putting on some backing before I put my braid on. And the reason for this is it's beneficial if you're going to be using braid to have something on under your spool so that your braid doesn't slip. This is something that braid has a tendency to do, especially when you get into like 30+ pound braid, which I wouldn't really recommend throwing on a spinning reel, but it can slip if you don't have something to connect your braid to your actual spool. So there's really two main ways to go about doing this. And those are putting mono on underneath your braid or putting electrical tape just directly on the spool. Now, a lot of reels now have actual grooves for the braid to sit in, and this should help reduce that. But personally, I still like to do it. It's just a habit that I got into, so I'm still going to do it even though that those grooves are there. Another big advantage of this is it also saves a little bit of money if you put mono on under your braid, because this actually costs more than this entire spool of mono. So I would recommend putting on a little bit of mono on underneath. That way you can just save a little bit of money, save a little bit of braid, unless you feel like using it. But that's just a personal thing. All right, so we have our rod that we're going to use, our reel, and I have my line. I'm going to use this as backing. This is just 12-pound mono. It's kind of my go-to for backing. It takes up a decent amount of space on the spool. It's pretty cheap, and it works pretty well if you really need to use it for anything. So overall, big fan. I'm going to be putting 30-pound Yozuri Super Braid on over this, using this primarily for Senkos and some like heavier spinning reel stuff. So the first thing I did was I took my line and I ran it through all the eyes on the rod. And this is something, it's really going to be hard to get this on if you don't have it like going through the eyes on your rod to start with, because you are going to have to crank this on at some point. So there are a couple different ways that you can go about getting your line to actually stay on your spool. Personally, I just like to tie a couple overhand knots to the spool itself and make sure it doesn't slip or anything. You should be good. Some reels I think have some form of keeper on here. You can run it through and then like it holds it there. Personally, that kind of stresses me out. So what I like to do is just take my line. You're going to want to open your bail. It's another big thing. If you do this with a closed bail, you'll have to redo it. So you're going to want to just run it through like that. So your line is going on both sides of your spool like that. And then I'm just going to set this down just so I can get an extra hand on it. You're going to want to just tie a nice little overhand knot. And once you have one loop, I'm going to double it and do a second overhand knot. And then you pull tight. And how you know you did it right is if you pull on it and it doesn't go anywhere, you're good. If you pull on it and your knot comes apart, that's going to be an issue. You're going to need to redo it. So if you can pull on like your main line piece and it doesn't go anywhere, you're good. Because that means if for some reason you get down to that, you don't want to have a cast where it rips all the way down to this, and then you cast and your line just flies off into the lake, and then that's just not good. So have that down. So I'm going to cut my excess piece, not the piece that I tied this with, and we are going to hope it stays tightened down. I am going to actually tie that cut that a little closer. Boom. All right, cool. With that done, now we're going to close our bail, and then I'm going to put this reel into the seat on the rod. Tighten this up. And if you are just going to fish with mono, if you don't want to mess with the braid part, you can actually just reel your line into the spool now and you're good. Personally, I'd rather get some braid on here. It's more of an application thing. So I'm not done yet. There's going to be one more step basically. But if you can get your line tied to the spool, that's going to be the toughest part. And if you're putting this on here for the first time and you look down at your spool and you get done and you're like, wow, this doesn't really look super even, do not worry about it. Once you fish with it a little bit, the line will even itself out. Another big thing is you want to make sure that your drag is tight when you're doing this. So if you pull on this line, it shouldn't go anywhere. For example, I am going to just reel a little bit more in just to show. If I reel a bit of line in, I shouldn't be able to pull on this and have it pull back out. It means your line won't get tight to the reel. So I'm not putting a ton of mono on here, just enough to kind of back this up. So then that way I can put this whole spool on here and it won't overfill. So this is 150 yards. I'm gonna check my reel spool capacity, which is on the reel. And for braid, for 20 pounds, it holds 300 yards. So if I was going to fill this all the way up with 30 pound, I don't think it would hold up. So I am just going to put some mono back here as backing. Now, once you have your line going to your reel, you have it tied off, you're ready to go. General rule of thumb is you want your line coming off of the spool the same way it's going to go on. So with a spinning reel, it's really easy because you can just set this down and it'll just turn and you're good. If it's a bait caster, you're going to really need a friend, or you can use a pencil if you don't have a friend with you, to basically run this through so it comes off this way. But because it's a spinning reel, you're going to want it to come off the same way it goes on. So I'm just going to set this on top of this pool table, and then all you need to do is just take the line and put it between two of your fingers so you keep good tension when it comes on, and then just crank it on. And then that's all you need to do. And then you're just going to do this until it fills up to whatever level you want it to be at. For me, again, I'm not going to let this get super full because I am going to be putting braid on over this. But if you're putting on just straight mono, you'll just fill this all the way until it gets to this outer ring. And I don't want to put too much on here because I don't want to be casting through my leader knot, but I just want to get enough on here that it'll be full once I put this braid on over the top of it. So we're cranking a little more. Yeah, so it's a quick little process. Another recommendation I have if you're using mono especially is you don't want to be, you want to do this before you go fishing, like preferably a day or two before. If you're about to go hit the water and you're watching this like right before you go out, not a huge deal. You're just going to be a little bit more likely to have a line twist, which is not a big deal. But if you really want mono, especially to mono or fluorocarbon to perform the best, I would recommend putting it on, tying a bait on, and making sure it has good tension for a couple days. That way you don't get any funny knots. So I'm going to get a little bit more on here. And then that should probably be about good. So this is going to be my mono. Again, if you're just filling up with mono, this is the first time you filled up a reel, it's probably going to be monofilament line. This is stretchy stuff like Berkeley Trilene. You can always, it usually says on there what it is. Like this is highly manageable monofilament. So if it's mono or fluoro, you don't want to mess with it. You can just fill this up and you're good. I am going to mess with it because that's what I do. So the next step in the process is you're going to have to tie a leader knot, which there are a ton of leader knots to pick from. So this really comes down to personal preference. The one I'm going to tie for this is either going to be the double uni or the surgeons. Those are kind of my two favorites. I'm probably going to tie the double uni for this. And the reason is it takes an extra second, but the knot itself isn't going to stick up as much. And again, hopefully you're not really casting with this knot. So you don't need to know how to tie like anything too advanced. So you don't need to learn the FG knot for this. Like this knot doesn't see a lot of strain. And if it does, you can always just retie it. Not a big deal. This is kind of my go-to braid, is Yozuri Super Braid. It's a really good deal. I have had no issues with it. I'm a big fan. Yeah, so have our 2 pieces of line here. The double uni knot is just the uni knot twice, which is the uni knot is a very common knot for just normal knots for fishing. So we got our loop, and for this, you just want to think of it like you're tying the fisherman's knot, your loop. Just consider that like the eye of your hook. So you're just going to run it through, and then just tie the fisherman's to that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go back through here. Boom. Now the most important thing, I would not recommend tying that tight yet, or pulling it tight yet, until you get your other side done. And then you have to be careful to make sure you don't accidentally pull the braid end out. And then all you need to do is on your braid side, just do the same exact thing. So you're just going to tie the double uni to the braid side. It's a little bit tougher with the braid, but it's not bad. And then from there, once you get your second piece done, get your knot straightened out so you can kind of look at it. And then I'd recommend wetting it, just however. And you can pull it tight. And then if you do it right, it should cinch down on itself like that. You can really pull on it. That's not going anywhere. Our backing line, which in this case is going to be mono, which then is going to run to our leader knot, which I'm just going to reel into a little bit here so you guys can see it. So now we got our reel with our backing leader knot into our braid, which is going to be our main line. And again, if you're fishing just straight mono, straight fluoro, you don't need to worry about this. Or if you just want to put duct tape on your spool and then just tie braid straight to the duct tape, it should hold on to that okay. And if you have a reel that has like a piece of rubber or anything already on it, I think Fluger and a couple other reel companies already started doing this. Daiwa, I believe, as well. You can just tie the braid off to that, and then you don't need to mess with leader knot if you don't want to. I like to do it because it saves a little bit of money, but not a big deal. So then from here, same deal. Set it down flat, and then you can just reel into it. And with braid, it's not as important. It doesn't have any memory, so then you just reel until you get it as full as you want. So I want it to be kind of full. You get a little bit of casting distance when it's full, and then that way you don't need to do this again. And I don't want to have a weird like small amount of braid left. I'm done doing this, so I'm just going to fill it up until it's, I don't know, pretty full, or I run out of braid or something to that vicinity. Again, the nice thing is like this spool of braid was like $12. So this, if you're looking for a starter braid, you're like, if you don't know if you want to get into it, you're like, wow, so like Power Pro is expensive, because it is. It's good, but it's expensive. Super Braid or any other form of cheap braid is going to be your friend just to try it out. So we're pretty close here. You can kind of see there's not a huge gap on the spool. I'm going to go a little further. Again, I don't want to leave an awkward small amount of braid on here. I am, it looks like, so maybe I can find something for that. We'll see. I'll try to get it full or close. Squeeze down a little bit. All right, that's pretty much full. So we probably go a couple more turns here. Let's see where we're at. We're close. We're gonna go with it. It's gonna go here. Perfect. So there we go. And then the nice thing is you can tie off any fluoro or mono or anything if you want a leader on there. Probably wouldn't fish straight braid with too many things, but you can. Just depends on it if you can get away with it or not. If your fish will still eat straight braid, definitely recommend it, but it's just kind of whatever. So hope this video helps. This is how you put braid or mono on a spinning reel, and hopefully this guide helps. Again, if you're just fishing mono or fluoro, you don't really need to mess with that whole leader knot step. I just thought I would include it for me, so hope that helps. Remember to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel, and I will see you guys in our next video. If you have any questions or anything you want to see in a future video, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.